We have now reached the conclusion of this series on the anxiety of this sacrifice. And here we see the conclusion of Abraham's own experience with this extreme anxiety. Here on the mountain where God has sent him to sacrifice his son, God has withheld his hand and spared his son's life and provided a sacrifice for him. And you can only imagine in this situation, after going through everything that he went to just to get to Moriah, uh, going through, knowing what he was being called to do at that site, you can only imagine the relief that he experienced when God intervened and told him to, and he looked up and saw that ram. And I think we can all relate to this. I know all of us have gone through periods of time in our own lives where we have had that anxiety inducing event out in front of us. And it's all that occupies our mind. It's all that we think about. And as we trudge for it, we just feel more and more weighed down. And then once we get through it, the relief is great. And I think it's important for us to also react the way that Abraham did. Abraham did not look at the sacrifice that he got and then just kind of left it and went away with his son. He did worship God by offering it up to him. And I think that we too should have that attitude of thankfulness towards God for helping us get through that whole period. Now, another thing that I want to bring up in all of this, and it is something that we have talked about a little bit here, which is the similarities with this story as well as with what Jesus himself faced. And I think it's important to point out as we're in this season of Lent and we're approaching Good Friday, that in Jesus' own story, he too experienced this sort of call, this call to for a sacrifice, but that sacrifice was himself. And he prayed to God that that sacrifice would not come to fruition, that there would be another way, but God did not withhold his hand. And in that case, and in this case, God did provide, but he provided for us. And we should reflect on that. We should be thinking of that at this period of time, and we should be thankful for God to be willing to do that and to go through with it, to sacrifice his own son so that we can reconnect with him and that we can overcome sin. It's something that we should be very mindful of, that in both of these stories, there's a son that is called to be sacrificed, but in the story where it is God's own son, he doesn't withhold his hand. He does go through with it. And that is what I have been reflecting on this time, and I would encourage you all to do as well as we are approaching Easter at this time, because this is that big moment within Christianity. It is where we are able to it is how we are able to reconnect with God, and we should be mindful of it. So with that, I would like to invite you all to join me for our last worship song today.